10 hidden civilizations. All real, all documented, all impossible. Number 3 destroyed itself. Number 1 drowned. This is the countdown. Number 10. Nan Madol. In the Western Pacific, off the island of Pohnpei, there is a city built on top of the ocean. Nearly 100 artificial islands raised by hand on a coral reef, separated by canals, a capital people paddled through instead of walking. Its walls rise 25 feet above the water, stacked from natural basalt columns like log cabins, 750,000 tons of stone. The largest cornerstones weigh roughly 50 tons each. Pohnpei never had cranes, metal tools, or draft animals, only hands, rafts, and water. In 2016, archaeologist Mark McCoy dated coral in the royal tomb to around the year 1180, monumental architecture, centuries before Europe arrived. Nan Madol was the seat of the Sodler dynasty, rulers of Pohnpei for centuries. Then the dynasty fell, and the city emptied. Here is the problem. The basalt was quarried on the far side of the island. Modern raft experiments have failed to move such stones. Local tradition says the stones flew into place by magic. Archaeology's honest answer is shorter. We do not yet know. Keep count of something as we go. How many civilizations on this list were buried on purpose, by their own builders? It is not zero. A Venice in the middle of the Pacific, abandoned to the tide. But if a city on the water sounds impossible, the next one went underground. Number 9. Derinkuyu. In 1963, a man in central Turkey knocked down a wall in his basement during renovation. Behind it was a tunnel. The tunnel led down and down. What he found was an entire underground city. Derinkuyu reaches nearly 300 feet deep, with as many as 18 levels carved into volcanic rock. Room for up to 20,000 people. This was not a cave to hide in. It had stables, wine presses, kitchens, a school, and wells that could not be poisoned from above. More than 50 ventilation shafts kept the deepest chambers breathing. The engineering still works today. Corridors stand circular stone doors, half a ton each, rolled shut from the inside only. 200 underground settlements have now been found in this one region of Turkey. A reported tunnel links Derinkuyu to the next city, a shelter for 20,000 souls, forgotten behind a basement wall. The next civilization hid too, behind a jungle that kills. The city of the Jaguar. In eastern Honduras lies the Mosquitia, one of the least explored rainforests on Earth. For 5 centuries, legends spoke of a rich white city lost inside it. Archaeologists dismissed the story as myth. Then, in 2012, a survey plane flew over an unexplored valley, firing laser pulses through the canopy, a technology called LiDAR. The lasers returned the outline of plazas, earthworks, mounds, and a pyramid, a city, untouched. Archaeologists labeled the valley simply T1. In 2015, an expedition led by archaeologist Christopher Fisher cut through on foot and found what the lasers promised. At the base of the central mound, more than 500 carved stone objects, vessels, seats, and a snarling half-human, half-jaguar figure. A single offering, left in place, and never touched again for 600 years. The culture that built it has no name. It flourished around the year 1000 AD. Then its people vanished from the valley entirely. One theory is devastating. European diseases may have raced ahead of the Europeans themselves, emptying these cities before any outsider ever saw them. The expedition paid a price. Several members caught a flesh-eating parasite. The jungle still guards its city, and the next hidden world was even bigger. Number 7. The Casarabe culture. For a century, science was certain the Amazon soils were too poor to ever feed a civilization. Archaeologist Betty Meggers called it a counterfeit paradise, green, abundant-looking, and incapable of supporting cities. The Amazon disagreed. In 2022, researchers led by Heiko Prumas published LiDAR scans of the Llanos de Mojos in the Bolivian Amazon, in the journal Nature. Beneath the forest lay urban centers no one predicted. Stepped platforms, and conical pyramids rising 70 feet at a site called Kotoka. Radiating outward, dead straight raised causeways running for miles across flooded savanna, with canals and reservoirs engineering the seasonal floods. This society thrived for 900 years, from roughly the year 500 to 1400, organizing the water instead of fleeing it. Researchers call it low-density urbanism, a city dissolved into its own landscape, a garden that governed rivers. Then, around 1400, the centres emptied. The forest closed over the causeways. Within generations, even the memory was gone. Every new LiDAR survey pushes the numbers higher. Some researchers now argue the pre-Columbian Amazon held millions of people. The wilderness we call untouched may be the overgrowth of an abandoned world. The next civilization didn't just vanish, it buried its own monuments first. Number 6. The Olmec. In the Gulf lowlands of Mexico stand 17 colossal stone heads carved more than 3,000 years ago. The tallest reach 10 feet, the heaviest weigh over 40 tons. Each face is different, a portrait. They are believed to be kings. We do not know a single one of their names. The basalt came from mountains 40 miles away, moved without wheels, without draft animals, across rivers and through swamp. This is the so-called mother culture of the Americas, the people who came before the Maya, before the Aztec, before everyone. Even their name is borrowed. Olmec is what the Aztecs called the region 2,000 years later. Their real name is lost. At La Venta, archaeologists found 16 jade figurines arranged in a scene and buried. Later, someone dug down precisely to check on them, then sealed them again, forever. And here is your count. At San Lorenzo, monuments were found deliberately defaced, then carefully buried in long ridges, the first civilization to bury itself. Around 400 BC, the Olmec world faded. Kings without names, writing without readers. Halfway done, and it only gets stranger from here. If you're still here, you're exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe and comment which civilization has amazed you most. We read every one. Number 5. The Indus Valley Civilization. 4,500 years ago, 3 great powers shared the Bronze Age world. You know Egypt. You know Mesopotamia. The third was larger than both combined, and it was completely forgotten until 1924. Nearly 1 million square kilometers. More than 1,000 settlements. Its greatest city, Mohenjo-Daro, held some 40,000 people. It had grid-planned streets, covered sewers, and private bathrooms plumbed into city drainage, comforts most of the world wouldn't see again for 4,000 years. From one end of the territory to the other, bricks follow one standard ratio. So do the weights. 1 million square kilometers of quality control. Thousands of inscribed seals survive in a script of hundreds of signs. After a century of attempts, no one can read it. Stranger still, no palaces, no royal tombs, no grand temples, no monuments to any king, while Egypt was raising pyramids to god-kings. And almost no evidence of warfare. How do you run 1 million square kilometers without visible kings or armies? Nobody knows. Around 1900 BC, the rains began to fail. Rivers died slowly, over centuries, and a civilization of millions dissolved. Perhaps history's most peaceful great power, and we can't read one word of their story. The next kingdom, its neighbors called Paradise. Number 4. Dilmun. On the island of Bahrain sits one of the densest prehistoric cemeteries on Earth. Burial mounds by the tens of thousands. Packed so tightly, the landscape ripples like a frozen sea. Early scholars refused to believe the island could fill them. They called Bahrain an island of the dead, a place that buried but never lived. They were wrong. Dilmun appears in some of the earliest texts ever written. 5,000 years ago, Sumerian merchants traded copper through its ports. But in Sumerian myth, Dilmun was more. A pure land where the raven did not croak, the lion did not kill, and death held no power. It was in Dilmun that the gods settled the survivor of the great flood, and granted him eternal life. The myth has an address. Around Bahrain, freshwater springs surge up through the floor of the sea, sweet water rising out of salt. To the Sumerians, that was holy water from the deep. Even the name Bahrain means the two seas. For decades, Dilmun was considered half legend. Then Danish excavations in the 50s cut into a great mound and found its capital, walls, warehouses, seals, a real kingdom wearing a paradise myth. Now, remember the pit of golden faces from the start of this video? We're there. Number 3. Sanxingdui. In 1986, brick factory workers in China's Sichuan province broke into a Inside, deliberately layered, lay hundreds of objects unlike anything ever found in China. All burned, all smashed, all buried with care. Bronze masks a meter wide, with sharp smiles and eyes projecting from their sockets on stalks. A bronze figure, nearly 9 feet tall. A bronze tree hung with birds. A staff sheathed in gold. Elephant tusks by the hundred. And in 2021, from a newly opened pit, a mask of hammered gold. Nothing matched the textbooks. Chinese civilization was taught as one river's story. This was a parallel Bronze Age 1,000 kilometers away. The pits were not garbage and not war damage. Around 1100 BC, this civilization gathered the treasures of its own temples and executed, burned, broken, then arranged in layers. A ritual to end an era, a regime change. Every theory has evidence, none has proof. That's the second civilization on your count to bury itself. A chronicle written 1,000 years later remembers Shu's first king for one feature, protruding eyes. The next entry is older than farming itself. Number 2. Göbekli Tepe. In 1963, surveyors walked a hill in southeastern Turkey, noted broken limestone, and dismissed it as a medieval cemetery. 30 years later, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt looked again. What's inside is 11,500 years old. Rings of T-shaped pillars, up to 18 feet tall and 10 tons, carved with foxes, scorpions, snakes and vultures. That is 6,000 years before Stonehenge, 7,000 before the pyramids. There were no cities, no pottery, no metal, no wheel, no writing, and no farms, Göbek gatherers, which, according to every model of civilization, is backwards. Schmidt's conclusion flipped the story. Perhaps the temple came first, and feeding its gathered crowds is what pushed humans toward farming. The world's earliest domesticated wheat arose within sight of this hill. First came the temple, then came the city. After 30 years, less than a tenth is excavated, and the enclosures weren't abandoned, they were filled in, buried. Number 3 on your count. Humanity's first monument may also be its first time capsule. Only one thing is stranger than a civilization buried by people. One buried by the sea. For the finale, if this video earned it, the subscribe button is right there. Now, number 1. Doggerland. In 1931, a British trawler fishing the North Sea dragged up a lump of ancient peat. First split it open with a shovel. Inside was a carved antler harpoon point, more than 10,000 years old, found in open sea. It had no business existing, unless the sea had not always been sea. 1,000 years ago, Britain was not an island. From England to Denmark stretched a low, living country of rivers, lakes and forests. The Thames and the Rhine met in a single valley that is now seabed. In 1998, archaeologist Brian E. Coles named it Doggerland. It may have been the richest hunting ground in Europe, home to thousands. And the sea keeps handing their world back. Flints, harpoons, human bone. Scientists have now mapped the drowned country itself, using oil industry seismic data to trace its rivers, hills and coastlines beneath the seabed. Its end took lifetimes. As the ice melted, the sea rose. Grandparents told children of hunting grounds that were now lagoons. Around 6150 BC, a colossal undersea landslide off Norway sent a tsunami across the North Sea. Within centuries, nothing remained. Every civilization on this list was found. Doggerland can never be walked. An entire world sleeps under 40 meters of cold green water. A city on the ocean. A city under the earth. A jungle city guarded by disease. An Amazon that was never wild. Kings without names. A superpower we can't read. A paradise island of the dead. Golden faces executed and buried. A temple older than farming. And a country beneath the sea. 10 civilizations historians were sure could not exist. Every single one of them did. 3 buried themselves. And no one can fully explain why. The sea buried the last one. The planet keeps its secrets well. Which one would you stand inside for 1 hour? Tell us below. Subscribe, because the next video goes somewhere maps refuse to admit exists.